Desks like these are a dime a dozen on places like Facebook Marketplace and are often super inexpensive. To begin this project, I started by removing all the drawers from the desk and set them aside. Next, I carefully removed the wooden panels from the back of the desk with a hammer, making sure to do my best not to break or crack them. I then set them aside to be reused later. My next mission was to remove the top of the desk. I used an extension for my drill to remove all the screws from the braces that were located on the top inside of the desk. Once I removed all the screws and braces, I flipped the desk back up and was able to easily remove the top two pieces. I also used a screwdriver to pry off the front molding. Then I used my jigsaw to cut the braces in the middle, which easily came off, and then I had two separate cabinets. To create a longer desk space, I ordered a 74-inch long by 25-inch wide butcher block from Home Depot. I was able to have it shipped to my house, which worked out wonderfully. First, I sanded the butcher block quickly with 220 grit sandpaper, wiped it clean, then applied 2 coats of polyurethane to both sides of the butcher block, sanding lightly in between coats and allowing ample time for both sides to dry. Next, I needed to attach the cabinets to the new tabletop. To do this, I had to do a bit of math first. I drew all the measurements in pencil onto the butcher block, then placed the braces into position on the cabinet, flipped the cabinet upside down onto the butcher block, and then made sure the cabinet was in the correct position on the marks before I traced the internal braces. I removed the cabinet, lined the braces up with the marks, and pre-drilled holes into the butcher block using the existing holes on the braces. Once the holes were drilled, I glued the braces in place onto the cabinet with some wood glue, then positioned the cabinet back onto the butcher block, again lining up all the markings. Next up, I reattached the wood panels to the backs of the cabinets using a mixture of the old staples, some picture nails, and new staples. Because I already liked the color of the desk, I just got a color match at the hardware store and gave everything a fresh coat of paint. I also spruced up the knobs and handles with some antique gold rub and buff. Once the paint was all dry, I assembled the desk, set it up, and it's perfect. Now I have an extra large desk made with a piece of butcher block and an upcycled desk that's perfect for all my crafting projects.
This is my 4-year-old's 4th bedroom. She's had more rooms in her first 4 years of life than I had in my first 20. So I spent the last few weeks trying to make it special. Today, I built the desk. The legs for this desk are going to be made out of 2x2s. I'm measuring them to length, making a mark, and extending that mark with a speed square. I used 2 pressure clamps to hold down the material. It's not the cleanest cut, but it's straight, and that'll work just fine. I'll be using pocket screws to attach the 2x2s to each other to build the base. I'm going to conceal the pocket screws by turning them underneath and on the top of the desk. This is the step of the Craig drill bit. We need that step to line up to the 1¼ inch, 1.5 marking on the Craig unit. Loosen the collar on the Craig drill bit with an Allen key and then slide the step of the bit up to the mark. Lock and load and set the depth guide to accommodate 1.5 inch material. Clamp the Craig jig to your workbench and get to drilling. I'll be using 2.5 inch pocket screws and wood glue to secure all of my joints. I like to set my drill to around 14 and leave it on high when I'm attaching screws. This will keep the drill from drilling through the material and ruining the piece. Continue this process for all 4 pieces for each of the 2 legs. Repeat this process to construct each of the 2 legs. The final piece was pulling a little bit, so I used my hammer to force it into place. Attach the cross support piece 6 inches from the bottom of the legs. The Craig right angle clamp really helps keep the piece in place because the glue makes the piece want to slip off of your mark. I noticed that the legs were pulling in a little bit, so I added a 1x2 support piece to the top of the base. Pre-drill and attach to the base using 1¼ inch pocket screws. Measure in a couple of inches from the front and the back of your legs and use a larger drill bit to countersink a hole so that it will conceal the screws that we use to attach the base to the tabletop. Finally, use a slightly smaller drill bit than the shaft of the screw and drill completely through the top of the base. I wanted to give this desk a paint-dipped look, so I'm masking everything out from the 6-inch line with painter's tape. The top is to be stained in an amber shellac, and the bottom will be painted with a white chalk paint. Thoroughly mix the shellac and apply using a rag or a brush. After using a foam brush, I would suggest using a rag because the brush puts too much shellac on at once. Ideally, you want 2 thin coats of shellac rather than 2 really thick coats. You'll get uneven coverage and it'll be very frustrating. Allow the shellac to dry and then apply painter's tape to your 6-inch mark. Finally, apply 2 or 3 coats of chalk paint to your piece. I'm using Valspar's Chalky Finish paint. And now, the moment of truth. And the second moment of truth. Measure 2 inches off of the end of IKEA's Lindman desktop. Carry your mark from end to end using a straight edge, and repeat that process on the other side. Line the base up with the marks and attach to the tabletop using 2-inch wood screws. Flip it over and we have a desk.
If you are in the market for a couple of side tables or nightstands, consider an old vintage vanity instead. First up, I need to take it apart. I'm removing all the drawers, then studying how the vanity is built. Since this vanity is nailed together, I'm wedging a pry bar between the backboard and vanity, then hitting it with a rubber mallet to pull the boards apart. Now I'm checking where all the nails and joins are and removing whatever nails I can with a nail remover tool. However, for the most part, the crowbars, lots of pounding, and finally pulling apart the pieces by hand did the trick. Now I'm removing all the knobs from the drawers and attaching the original screws into the back so they don't get lost. I'm placing all the drawers onto some butcher paper with the varnished sides facing up along with the vanity. To strip off the varnish, I'm using a product called QCS by Stripwell, which is a non-toxic remover. I'm spraying the remover on all the varnished tops of the vanity and drawer tops, then allowing the product to sit for about 10 minutes. Using a putty knife, I'm scraping off the varnish. Most of the pieces needed 2 passes for everything. Now using a surface cleanser, I'm spraying it wherever the varnish was removed, then wiping the furniture clean with a rag. Next up is repairing the sides. Using an orbital sander, I'm sanding over the damaged areas of the nightstands, plus also scuff sanding the rest of the sides to prepare them for the next step. I'm using a putty knife to apply wood filler to smooth out any indents, nooks, and crannies. Some of the holes were very deep, so they required 2 coats with drying time in between. After several days of drying time, I'm sanding the putty smooth, then following up with an orbital sander to areas that needed a little extra work. Now I'm removing all the sanding dust using a tack cloth. Choosing a deep and beautiful paint color called Cast Iron by Fusion Mineral Paint, I'm painting all the small trim work with a smaller artist's brush. Since the sides are smooth and large, I'm choosing to paint them using a high-quality Stahlmeister velour roller I pick up through Fusion Mineral Paint to achieve a flawless finish with no brush strokes. I'm rolling on the paint with long, even strokes with an attempt to always work against a wet paint edge. What works best is to roll on all the paint, then slowly roll over it again from end to end with no stops in between to achieve the smoothest finish possible. To paint the drawer pulls, I'm using the screws to hold the knobs while I paint, then setting them down on egg cartons to dry. Now that the paint has set, I'm removing the painter's tape to allow the piece to completely dry. To protect the fronts of the drawers and the tops of the nightstands, I'm using Stain and Finishing Oil in Natural by Fusion Mineral Paint. This is a very easy wipe-on, wipe-off product to work with, and the durability it offers is floor quality. I'm brushing on the Stain and Finishing Oil until my chosen surface is completely covered, allowing it to sit for a few minutes, then wiping the product back off again with a clean lint-free rag. I allow this product to dry overnight. Once the paint has cured for about 30 days, I'll also be adding a coat of natural Stain and Finishing Oil on that as well for added furniture durability. And the final result are 2 absolutely stunning high-quality nightstands or side tables that are customized to suit my home. The tone of wood now looks so fresh and rich and feels as smooth as silk, which really pops against the decadent deep tone of cast iron, making this a gorgeous and timeless combination. Thanks for watching Home Talk, and we'll see you next time.